guys. Is that the Diamond Ender Dragon? OMG, that is insane.
These are the funniest fake Minecraft speedruns in history. So this first speedrunner spawns in near a village, and honestly, everything appears to be pretty normal. The world generation looks good, doesn't have any XP in his hotbar, and he appears to be in survival mode. But as he goes to loot one of the village houses, he makes a very obvious mistake. He accidentally presses tab and reveals that he's playing with one other person, something obviously not allowed during a solo speedrun. But it doesn't stop there, because after getting some hay and looting a few more houses, he forgets to mute his mic, and you can clearly hear him talking to his friend, the same one on the Minecraft server with him. Let's take a listen.
Yo, you put the diamond in the chest, right?
And it's no surprise when he finds this exact diamond in the next village house that he loots. It's pretty obvious he's using his friend to get OP loot. But this isn't the only help he receives in the speedrun, because as he makes his way to a nearby lava pool, he finds a random water bucket on the ground. And this guy has terrible acting.
Okay guys, basically there's a new feature where water buckets randomly spawn, so we're just gonna use that really quick.
But wait, rewind the footage and take a closer look at this tree, where the same friend we hear him talking to is trying to blend in by using a wood skin. I think it's pretty obvious he's the one who dropped the water bucket there. So he uses the water bucket to begin crafting a nether portal and enters the nether. Now, it would appear that he's traveling in a random direction, but he's actually following these strange particles in the air. And these particles are clearly coming from his friend we saw earlier in the run using an invisibility potion. And this is confirmed when he's unmuted and we can hear him asking his friend to lead him to the fortress. Let's take a listen.
Bro, you're leading me to the fortress, right?
This guy needs to learn how to mute his mic. So he reaches the fortress, kills some blazes, and gets 7 rods. But he doesn't go to a bastion to get ender pearls like in a normal speedrun, because he actually finds an enderman spawner, something that definitely doesn't exist in a fortress. And I'm pretty sure we all know who placed this spawner here. So he heads back to the overworld, and it's time for him to locate the stronghold. But notice how he doesn't actually follow this Eye of Ender that he throws, and actually goes in a completely different direction where he somehow magically finds the stronghold. But he makes a huge mistake you may have missed, because in this frame you can clearly see him using the /locate command, which reveals exactly how he knew to dig down at this block. So he finds the end portal room, but make note of the fact that there are 0 eyes in the portal, which is a problem for the runner because he only has 11 eyes. And because you need 12 to finish the portal, he can't travel to the end. But after the speedrunner loots this chest and turns back around, there's been an eye mysteriously placed in the portal. Now, I would be suspicious of the friend we've seen throughout the run, but there's no particles in the air that would point to him being there. But let's take a closer look. Remember when the speedrunner tried to blend in with the tree earlier in the run? You've got to be kidding me. He's trying to blend in with the wall? Well, I guess we know where that extra pearl came from. So the speedrunner enters the end, but notice how he doesn't have any beds, something very commonly used to kill the dragon. But not to worry, because he finds a building called the bed house. What explanation is he gonna give this time?
Guys, let's just go use the new bed house feature they just added in Minecraft.
Yeah, I bet my life savings that this isn't a real feature. So he goes inside the house where there's a sign saying deposit obsidian, and out comes all the beds that he needs to kill the dragon. While this speedrun was clearly fake, our next speedrunner might be even worse. This next speedrun begins, but take a very close look at the world generation. Before you generate a world in Minecraft, you're given a list of all of your previous generations on this menu. And in this player's case, we can clearly see his most recent speedrun occurred at 6:33 p.m., which means any of his next speedruns will occur after this time. So when the speedrunner finally spawns into his world, how is it possible possible that the time shows 3:07, which is nearly 3 hours before 6:33? Unless the speedrunner traveled back in time, this generation is completely fake. And the footage of him generating the world and spawning in are actually two different clips simply edited together. This will make sense soon. So the runner spawns in, and giving him the benefit of the doubt, things seem fairly normal. He mines some wood, crafts himself some tools, and finds a nearby village. But pause. This YouTube video posted by Dream over 3 years ago was his official world record speedrun. And if we play the footage, doesn't the world in Dream's speedrun look oddly familiar to the world in this speedrun? Look, here are both of their spawns, the exact same location. There's also this exact super tall cactus in the deserts. And there's also a pyramid in the same location in both speedruns. It's pretty obvious the speedrunner is using the same seed from Dream's world record speedrun to try to get an advantage. And now it makes sense as to why he faked the generation earlier. So he enters the village and begins to get hay and collect some beds. But when the speedrunner goes to kill the iron golem, notice how the iron golem isn't actually attacking him back. In a real Minecraft speedrun, the iron golem will always attack you after you hit it. But if you create one and spawn one in on your own, it won't fight back no matter how many times you hit it. Meaning, this player spawned in the iron golem himself off camera to make it easier to fight. So he collects the iron, mines some gravel, and begins to search for a lava pool, when the speedrunner decides to open Dream's video during his speedrun and starts copying his exact gameplay as he creates the nether portal. If you didn't think he was using Dream Seed earlier, this just confirms it. So the speedrunner enters the nether and goes in a very deliberate path to which he locates a nearby fortress. But how is it possible he located the fortress so quickly? Well, rewind the footage to just a few seconds earlier when the speedrunner added this random keyboard cam. And while it may appear innocent, he deliberately placed it in the bottom left corner of the screen, the exact same area where chat and commands are shown in Minecraft. And if we put his footage in an editing software and slow it down frame by frame, we can actually see the speedrunner use a /locate command and try to hide this command by adding in the keyboard cam, but did it just one frame late. So now it's obvious how he found the fortress so quickly. So the runner enters the fortress and begins to kill blazes and collect some rods. He then finds a group of nearby endermen and collects some pearls, but notice how he's only able to craft a total of 6 eyes of ender, even though the end portal requires you to have at least 12, meaning he won't be able to travel to the end. But this will make sense in a few seconds. So he makes his way back to the overworld and finds the stronghold. And when he enters the end portal room, what kind of cursed end portal is that? It's clearly different from what a real end portal looks like. And now it's obvious why the speedrunner only had to collect 6 eyes of ender. Now, I honestly don't even know if this is gonna work. Wait, how did that work? So the speedrunner enters the end, and for some reason, the ender dragon is somehow already dead. So I guess he just jumps in the portal and completes the run. So this next speedrun begins, and take a very close look at the world generation. In a real speedrun, the screen must show this number reaching 100%. But in this speedrun, you can see him cut the footage at 98%. So when he spawns right in front of a village, we know he's using a set seed and edited the world generation to make it look real. But giving him the benefit of the doubt, everything looks legitimate at a first glance. He doesn't have any XP, he's in survival mode, and doesn't start with any weird items in his inventory. Until you look closer at the roof of this village house, which has clearly been marked by the speedrunner with this slightly different colored stair, to mark out the fact that this house has a chest with bread, apples. Wait, is that a rocket launcher? Remember this for later. So he leaves the village and begins his search to find a lava pool to build a nether portal, where he suddenly stops and digs straight down at this random block, magically leading him straight straight to a lava pool. But how is it possible he knew to dig down at this exact block? Well, if we slow down this footage from just a few seconds earlier, you can clearly see the position of the bread and apples in his hotbar switch, meaning there was a cut in his recording, which allowed the speedrunner to go off camera and find the location of the lava pool in spectator mode. So he begins to build his nether portal, but ends up running out of lava with just one block short of finishing the portal. But somehow he actually manages to light the nether portal, and I'm not even gonna try to explain how he does that. So he enters the nether and immediately spawns in front of a fortress. But instead of heading straight into it, the speedrunner oddly just stops moving his character and stands completely still while the timer is still running. Let's just take a listen to his audio to figure out what's going on.
Jimmy, get off Minecraft and go do your homework.
I kid you not, he literally changes his tab from Minecraft to Khan Academy and starts doing math equations. You cannot make this up.
5 minutes later.
Anyway, he finally returns to the game and heads into the fortress where he's able to get 7 blaze rods fairly easily. He then makes his way over to a nearby bastion and ends up getting pretty lucky with the piglin trades, getting 16 pearls very quickly. But that is not what's fake about these piglin trades, because he also ends up getting a compass, something that is impossible to receive from a piglin trade. Now you're probably asking, why would the speedrunner fake getting a compass, because how could that even help him in the speedrun? Well, when he goes back to the overworld and opens his crafting table, he uses this exact compass to craft something called a stronghold finder. And with just one click of it, a message appears saying stronghold located, and the compass directs the speedrunner straight to the stronghold. And now it's clear why he made it seem like he got the compass from a piglin. So he finds the end portal room and begins to fill the portal, but ends up just being one eye short. But hold on, take a closer look at this block. This block is smooth stone, when in a normal stronghold, this block is supposed to be a stone brick. And when he breaks this smooth stone, he magically finds a chest with the last eye of vendor he needs to finish the portal. He clearly tried to mark out the spot of the chest by using a different block, hoping we wouldn't notice. So the speedrunner enters the end, and here's where things get crazy. You're probably expecting him to fight the dragon with maybe some beds, perhaps even a bow. Oh no, no, no. Do you remember when earlier in the run, the speedrunner got a rocket launcher from this chest? Well, he equips it and... This next speedrunner spawns in and immediately goes to mine some wood. He then collects some rocks, and then gets into a fight with the spider. Wait, this is the wrong footage. This next speedrun begins, and at a first glance, everything appears to be pretty normal. He's in survival mode, he selected the first slot of his inventory, and he has 0 XP. But take a very close look at the area surrounding him when he spawns in. In a real Minecraft speedrun, your character will always spawn parallel to the surrounding blocks. But in this speedrun, you can clearly see that the speedrunner is actually facing diagonally. This all means that the speedrunner has already generated this world and the loading screen was fake. So he makes his way to a nearby village where he gathers some hay and gets some beds. He then opens this chest that contains some pretty interesting loot: apples, bread, and 3 diamonds. Now you may not even realize it, but some of this loot is completely fake. A diamond is only able to spawn in one specific village house, a blacksmith. But rewind the footage to just a few seconds earlier, where we can clearly see that this house is not a blacksmith, meaning the speedrunner placed the diamond himself in creative mode to get an advantage, because he uses these very diamonds to craft himself a diamond destroyer. That thing is powerful. So the run continues with the runner looking to locate a ruined portal, and he happens to find one pretty quickly, which seems awfully suspicious. Well, rewind the footage to just a few seconds earlier, where if you zoom in on this specific tree, do you see how it makes out the shape of an arrow with its leaves? This was clearly created by the speedrunner as a way to remember which direction the ruined portal was located. So he loots the chest at the ruined portal, which contains 2 obsidian, fairly normal loot. The only problem is that means he's just 1 block short to complete the portal. So how is he gonna travel to the nether? Well, the speedrunner pulls out a dirt block, places it in the final slot for the portal, and this guy's dumb. This clearly is not gonna work. How did that work? I'm not even gonna try to explain how he did that. So the runner spawns into the nether and things seem fairly normal. He's still in survival mode, he doesn't have any potion effects, and he starts searching for a fortress. But pause the footage at this frame, where the speedrunner opens his inventory, where we can spot a singular fire resistance potion hidden in the corner. But look, just a few seconds ago when he spawned into the nether, he clearly didn't have this potion in his inventory. Well, if you actually place this part of the footage in slow motion, you can actually see that there was a clear cut in the video as the lava completely jumps forward in time, meaning the speedrunner cut the video and got the fire resistance potion off camera. So using this potion, it's extremely easy for the runner to kill blazes and get 7 rods. Now a normal speedrunner would then make his way to a bastion to collect ender pearls, but this speedrunner decides to head straight back to the overworld. Interesting, and it will make sense soon. So the runner spawns in, but without ender pearls, it's impossible for him to locate the stronghold. Well, he finds a nearby village and opens a chest with pretty normal loot. Bread, iron, and a waystone? There's no way this is a real Minecraft item. So he gets the waystone, places it down, and when he clicks it, teleports straight into the stronghold. Is that even possible? Now, even though the runner managed to get to the stronghold, he still doesn't have any ender pearls to complete the portal. So he opens this chest, and while it may appear as though these are completely normal items, one item in particular isn't able to spawn in this chest, the lever. And it's clear the speedrunner placed it there himself because he uses this lever for something very specific. To turn off the lights? Is that even possible? So the speedrunner waits until exactly 1 minute has passed before the lights turn back on. And let me know if you can see what's different about the world. Well, compare the end portal from before and after the lights have been turned off. It's been completely filled in, meaning the portal was filled by someone else while the lights were off. So the runner jumps in the portal, but finds an unsuspecting guest when he spawns into the end. Is that Herobrine? Things just got scary. So Herobrine types in the chat demanding that the player throws every single one of his items into the void as a sacrifice. So probably scared out of his mind, the speedrunner complies and gets rid of all of his items. And after the sound of the lightning strike, the Ender Dragon has been mysteriously killed. Was it Herobrine? I guess we're never going to know. This next speedrun starts with the runner mining some wood and crafting some tools, where he then finds a nearby village. He starts by collecting some hay and killing the iron golem, but the speedrunner then finds a very strange house in the village called the Nether House? What explanation is he going to give for this?
Okay, we're going in the brand new village house called the Nether House. It's a brand new feature.
So he enters the house and the chest contains all of the necessary items to enter the nether. At least the house was named properly. So using his items from the Nether House, the speedrunner enters the nether, where he suddenly starts building straight up, digs through the roof, and ends up straight into the fortress. He clearly already knew the position of the fortress before recording. So the speedrunner searches for the blaze spawner, where he instead finds finds Notch? And the speedrunner is absolutely ecstatic.
Oh my gosh, guys, we found Notch in the speedrun. That's so lucky.
So Notch gives the speedrunner a full stack of blaze rods. Since when did Notch just give players items? So the runner collects his rods from Notch and begins to search for a nearby bastion. But the runner decides to randomly stop moving, even though the timer is still going. Let's check in on his audio to figure out what's going on.
Guys, I'm really sorry. My dad just told me I gotta go take out the trash, so I'll be back.
And the speedrunner cuts off the footage. He does realize he's in a speedrun, right?
5 hours later.
Sorry guys, I'm back. Just had to take care of that really quick.
So the speedrunner finally returns to the game, but he actually just cheated. Because if you look closely at his inventory, he suddenly has 16 ender pearls. Even though we clearly saw he never went to a bastion. Meaning he used taking out the trash as an excuse to cut the video and get ender pearls off camera. So the runner crafts himself a portal and heads back to the overworld, where he decides to start looking for the stronghold, but strangely does not use any of his eyes of ender to do so. But this will make sense soon. So after trying to search for it without eyes of ender, he suddenly gets the urge to dig down at this specific block.
I have a feeling the stronghold is under this block. Trust me, it's gonna work.
And to my amazement, this actually leads him straight into the stronghold. But how did the speedrunner know to dig down at this exact block if he didn't even use Eyes of Ender? Well, take a very close look at the surrounding area before the speedrunner dug down. Do you notice this flower just a few blocks away from where he digs down? Well, this is a flower known as the Lily of the Valley. The problem is, this flower is only able to spawn in a flower forest biome, but we can clearly see the speedrunner is in a plains biome. This all means that the runner placed it himself in creative mode to remind him that the stronghold was under this location. So, the runner finds the end portal room and crafts his eyes to finish the portal. But when the speedrunner jumps in, he gets sent to the nether? Is that even possible? Well, he happens to spawn directly next to a room, which not only has a chest with all of the items he needs to kill the ender dragon, but a fully lit end portal for him to use extremely quickly. So he gathers the overpowered items and gets teleported to the end. And using these items, the fight ends very quickly. This next runner spawns in directly near a shipwreck, where he's in survival mode, selected the first lot of his inventory, and he's facing completely straight. Seems legit. But as the runner goes to loot the shipwreck chest, we can clearly see another player trying to hide behind these wooden planks. The problem is, this is a solo speedrun, and having another player on the same world is clearly not allowed. So when the runner finds a god apple in the shipwreck chest, it's pretty obvious his friend is the culprit. The runner then returns to shore and locates a nearby village, and heads straight to one specific village house, where the chest inside contains some fairly normal loot. Bread, apples, a super battle axe. Wait, what? But hold on a second. How did the speedrunner know that this super overpowered item was in this village house? Well, let's go back to when the speedrunner first entered the village. If you look very closely above the house that contains the super battle axe, you can actually see the outline of a player wearing a skin he thinks blends in with the sky. Most likely, this is the same friend who accidentally revealed himself earlier in the run, and he purposely flew above this village house to alert the player the super battle axe was inside. So the runner finds a nearby lava pool and enters into the nether. The speedrunner then decides to use a popular speedrun technique for locating a fortress, where they increase their FOV and use the number of entities to guide which direction a fortress may be located. But when comparing their method to a real speedrunner, it's obvious that this runner is simply using this as a distraction, because at the exact same time, we can actually spot the friend we've seen throughout the run flying in a very specific direction. And 20 seconds later, if we listen to the speedrun's audio, we can actually hear a Discord notification. And all of a sudden, the speedrunner knows the exact direction the fortress is located. It's pretty obvious his friend used a locate command to find the fortress, DM'd him the coordinates on Discord, which the speedrunner used to find the fortress. So he enters the fortress, finds the blaze spawner, but only collects 4 rods. And later when he goes to locate a bastion, he decides to only collect 6 ender pearls. A normal Minecraft speedrunner would often collect far more of each item to have enough eyes to finish the portal, but his small amount of items will make sense very soon. So the runner needs to make a portal to head back to the overworld. The problem is he didn't get enough obsidian to be able to build another portal, until when he's walking, a stack of obsidian magically falls from the sky. And if you look closely, you can see particles in the air, meaning the obsidian was being dropped by his friend using an invisibility potion. So using the obsidian, the runner is able to make their way to the overworld, and they seem to locate the stronghold very quickly. But giving them the benefit of the doubt, their process seemed fairly normal. Now, do you remember earlier in the run when the speedrunner did not collect a normal amount of rods and pearls? Well, he enters the stronghold and he only has 6 eyes of ender, far too little to complete the portal. Well, when he enters the end portal room, he finds a chest called the item duplicator. Is this a new update that I missed? Okay, he's gotta be joking. Why is he actually putting his eyes of ender? It's not gonna work. Okay, how is that possible? Well, I guess now it's clear why he didn't need to collect a ton of rods or pearls in the nether. So with enough eyes of ender, the runner makes their way into the end. And when they spawn in the end, the friend isn't even hiding that they're part of the speedrun, and they kill the ender dragon together. This next speedrun begins, and on the surface, it appears fairly normal. He's in survival mode, there's no items in his inventory, and the runner's facing completely straight. However, take an extremely close look at this village house. In a normal village house, the entrance will always include a stair right in front of the door. But in this speedrun, we can clearly see that instead of a stair, there's a wood plank, meaning the speedrunner deliberately marked out this village house because the chest inside contains iron, apples, and a grenade launcher. Remember this for later. The runner then makes his way to a nearby lava pool. But if you look closely, the speedrunner has an empty bucket of water in his inventory, not one with water, which means there's no way for the speedrunner to create a nether portal like a normal speedrun. But somehow, even though his bucket is literally empty, he's actually able to place water. That is absolutely mind-blowing. So after summoning water out of literal thin air, the speedrunner enters the nether. Now, the issue with this spawn into the nether is that the speedrunner somehow has a fire resistance effect, even though he clearly didn't have this seconds earlier when he was the overworld. The only possible explanation is that the speedrunner has already traveled to the nether, and he almost would have gotten away with this until you look closer into the corner of the screen where a singular wooden pickaxe can be located. Clearly, the speedrunner tried to get rid of it off camera but forgot to clean it up. The speedrunner then makes his way to a nearby bastion where he collects gold blocks and starts to trade with piglins until he finds, let's just say, a rather strange looking piglin. But don't worry, there's no way this piglin can actually trade loot. Wait, how did he just get ender pearls? I'm so confused. So the runner then begins to search for a nether fortress. But notice how fast the speedrunner is running. Way faster than the normal Minecraft character speed. Well, take a close look at the top right corner of the screen. Normally, this is the exact area where potion effects are displayed in Minecraft. But the speedrunner has conveniently placed a subscribe button in the exact same spot, meaning the speedrunner is trying to hide the fact that he's using a speed potion he likely got off camera. So he finally makes his way to the fortress, and after killing Blazes, gets 7 rods. Now, I want you to take a mental image of his inventory at this very moment. You'll see why this is important in a few seconds. So, the runner leaves the fortress before randomly deciding to change tabs from Minecraft to Fortnite and literally starts to play. Now, while it may appear that he's being dumb by wasting a ton of time, he's actually using this as a way to try to cheat. Because when he logs off Fortnite and finally returns back to Minecraft, take a very close look at his inventory. There has been a netherite sword magically added to his hotbar when this exact slot was empty before he started playing Fortnite. It's pretty clear he used Fortnite as a way to distract us from adding an overpowered item to his inventory off camera. The speedrunner then makes his way back to the overworld. Now, a normal speedrunner would now use the process of triangulation to locate the position of the stronghold, but this speedrunner claims to have a brand new method that's even easier. Let's take a listen.
So all you have to do is go to the nearest tree, go 10 blocks to the right, and dig straight down.
Alright, so no way will this actually work. It's not actually gonna lead into the strongholds. How did that work? Now, you're probably thinking that this speedrunner is some sort of genius, but there's one small detail which reveals this method is completely fake. Take an extremely close look at the tree he uses to quote-unquote locate the strongholds. Do you notice how the texture of this piece of wood is slightly different from the rest of the tree? Well, this is because the piece of wood is actually horizontal, not vertical, which isn't possible to spawn naturally, meaning the speedrunner deliberately marked out this tree as a way to remember the stronghold was directly under it. So the runner enters the stronghold, finds the end portal room, and enters the portal. Now, a normal Minecraft speedrunner would then use beds or even a bow to kill the ender dragon. But do you remember earlier when the speedrunner found a grenade launcher in this village chest? Well, he equips it and nothing else needs to be said. This next run begins, and at a first glance, it appears to be fairly normal. He's in survival mode, he selected the first slot of his inventory, and he doesn't have any XP. But in the bottom right corner, he gets the message that someone has joined his world. This means the speedrunner is playing on a multiplayer server, something clearly not allowed during a solo speedrun. So the runner loots some chests, collects some beds, and starts to fight the Iron Golem. But while he's doing this, zoom in and look very closely into the distance, where we can spot a nether portal being built out of thin air. Clearly, it's another player building this, likely the same one who joined the world earlier in the run. So the runner makes his way to the man-made ruin portal, where he enters the nether and starts to trade with piglins, where the speedrunner manages to get 16 ender pearls from a single trade, which is literally impossible, as the max amount of pearls a piglin can drop per trade is 4. But rewind the footage and slow it down slightly. If you look very closely, you can actually see that the ender pearls aren't coming from the piglin, but actually coming from the side. And if you look even closer, you can see particles floating in the air. What does this mean? This is clearly the same friend we've seen throughout the speedrun, using an invisibility potion and dropping ender pearls himself. So the speedrunner then makes his way to a nearby fortress. But things only get worse, because during his fight with all the blazes, one blaze seems to be slightly different from the rest. There's no way he actually thought people would believe this is a real blaze. So after getting some rods, the runner heads back into the overworld. Now, we've seen his friend do some pretty funny things throughout the speedrun, but I don't think anyone expected for him to come on the screen wearing a skin with coordinates to the strongholds. And I gotta give it to him, that's insanely creative. So after looking at his friend's skin, he's easily able to locate the position of the stronghold, where he crafts his Eyes of Ender and enters into the end, and conveniently spawns in right next to Spider-Man? Is this actually the real one, or is it just his friend hand we've seen throughout the run. Well, Spider-Man does all of the dirty work for him, and all he has to do is run on the surface and jump in the portal. This next speedrun begins, and there's already something off. No, it's not his spawn, as he's facing completely straight. And it's not even his hotbar, as he has 0 items in his inventory and he's in survival mode. But look into the left corner of the screen. You can spot a bonus chest. The problem is, we clearly saw the speedrunner had this option disabled when he generated his world. This means that the footage of him loading into the game and his spawn are actually 2 different clips edited together. This will make more sense very soon. So, the runner starts off by breaking some wood, crafting tools, and locating some buried treasure, where he collects some gold and iron, fairly normal loot. But he then finds a suspiciously convenient ruins portal directly next to his spawn. And while the loot in the chest seems to be fairly normal, this seed seems slightly familiar. Well, after a bit of research on the official speedrun.com website, look at the second fastest speedrun ever attempted by the runner No Fear 1337. And if we take a look at the spawn, notice how it's exactly the same as this speedrun. The buried treasure is also in the exact same location, and the loot is completely identical, meaning the speedrunner took the seed from this world record run and used it to gain an advantage. Hence why he had to edit together his world generation to make it seem real. So, the runner finishes the portal and spawns into the nether, directly next to a bastion. And while that may seem very suspicious, that isn't what's fake about this part of the speedrun, because take a closer look at the zombie pigman to the right of him. If you put the footage in slow motion, you can see that there was a slight cut in the recording, as this zombie pigman jumped completely forward in time. But why was there a cut? Well, notice how the speedrunner has suddenly acquired an iron pickaxe in his inventory, when just seconds earlier, we can clearly see that this same inventory slot was not an iron pickaxe. He clearly cut the video to get an iron pickaxe in creative mode, as he knew you couldn't mine gold blocks in the bastion without an iron pickaxe. And what's even funnier is he literally had enough iron to craft the pickaxe normally, but still decided to cheat. So, using this pickaxe, he enters the bastion and successfully collects 27 gold ingots. But this is where things start to get interesting, because it appears as though the piglins are making trades without any gold being in their hands. And what's even weirder is that we can clearly see the runner still has 27 ingots in his hotbar, meaning he hasn't even dropped any for the piglins to trade with. So how are they making trades without any gold in their hands? Honestly, I have no idea, and I don't even want to question it. So the runner gets lucky with his trades and collects 16 ender pearls out of thin air. Now, a normal speedrunner would then make his way to a fortress to collect blaze rods, a crucial item in crafting Eyes of Ender. But this speedrunner decides to ignore fortress and instead build a portal heading straight back to the overworld. This seems very weird, but it will make sense in a few seconds. So, the runner spawns back into the overworld, but randomly decides to craft a bow and sail in a random direction until he finds a fortress? In the overworld? How is that even possible? Well, now it's clear why he didn't bother looking for one in the nether. So, he enters the fortress, finds the blaze spawner, and collects 7 rods fairly easily. He then crafts Eyes of Ender and starts throwing them in hopes of locating the strongholds. And to nobody's surprise, the eyes point to the strongholds being directly under the fortress. So, the runner digs down, enters the stronghold, and starts to search for the end portal room, which he seems to find extremely quickly. Very bizarre considering he didn't use any techniques for locating the room like a real speedrunner would. Well, rewind the footage to when the speedrunner first entered the strongholds. Notice how the block on top of some of the doors is slightly thinner than blocks on other doors. This thinner block is known as a stone brick wall, not a regular stone brick. And if you replay the footage, notice how the speedrunner only enters doors with this thinner block on top. These were clearly placed off camera by the speedrunner as a way to direct him in the path of the end portal room. So, the runner places his Eyes of Ender ender and teleports into the end. Now, instead of immediately going for the dragon, or even trying to break the crystals, the speedrunner claims to have a brand new strategy to kill the dragon, and I'll let him explain.
Okay guys, there's a brand new feature they just added called the Secret Dragon Vault, and we're gonna go loot it right now.
Okay, well last time I checked, this isn't a real feature. Why is he actually breaking the obsidian? Oh my gosh, it's actually real. So the runner enters one of the most overpowered secret vaults I've seen in Minecraft. Full netherite armor, a chest filled with god apples, and the strongest bow in all of Minecraft. And with this loot, the Ender Dragon doesn't last much longer. This next run begins and take a very close look at the world generation. In a real speedrun, the screen must show this box being completely filled in. But in this speedrun, you can see him cut the footage before the box is completely finished. So when he spawns directly in front of a village, we know the speedrunner is using a set seed and tried editing the world generation to make it seem real. But giving the speedrunner the benefit of the doubt, everything looks fairly legit during his spawn. He has 0 XP, he selected the first slot in his hotbar, and he doesn't have any items in his inventory. But take a close look at the loot in this village chest. There's iron, there's some apples, and a villager rocket. I'm pretty sure this isn't a real Minecraft item. So the run continues with the speedrunner making his way to a nearby ruins portal. But notice how he passed several rose bushes on the way, which is impossible as rose bushes can't spawn in plain biomes, the biome that the speedrunner is in, meaning the speedrunner planted them off camera to lead him straight to the location of the ruins portal. So he opens the chest where he finds some iron and obsidian, pretty normal loot. But he also finds a lever, which is impossible as levers can't spawn in village chests. Remember the lever for later. So the runner grabs the obsidian from the chest and completes the nether portal. Now, you probably didn't even notice it, but the speedrunner actually just cheated. Because look, just a few seconds ago when the speedrunner opened his inventory, we can clearly see there is not a single flint and steel anywhere in his items. But we can clearly see he used flint and steel to light the nether portal. So how did he get it? Well, if we slow down this part of the footage, we can notice a slight cut happen in the recording. Likely, the speedrunner then went off camera and got a flint and steel in creative mode. So he enters the nether, and the first thing you'll notice is that the lava is already flowing. Lava cannot start floating until someone spawns into the nether. And because the lava has already flowed all the way down, we know the speedrunner had already entered the nether off camera. And this is confirmed even further when the speedrunner doesn't get the achievement for entering into the fortress. The speedrunner then randomly gets a fire resistance effect, even though he never had one in his inventory. And this is likely to help him out with fighting blazes, where he gets a respectable amount of rods. Now, in a normal speedrun, runners would then travel to a bastion where they would trade with piglins to collect ender pearls. But I guess I may have missed an update because first off, I don't remember gold blocks spawning in a fortress. And secondly, I definitely don't remember there being a piglin spawner instead of a blaze spawner. This guy can't stop cheating. So he uses the gold he got from the fortress and trades with the piglins to get ender pearls, where he slowly makes his way back to the overworld. Now, this is where normal speedrunners would begin throwing their eyes of ender, hoping to locate the stronghold through a process known as triangulation. But this guy seems to have a different plan. Do you remember when the speedrunner got a lever from this village chest earlier in the run? Well, I guess this is the new method for getting to the stronghold. So he finishes the portal, but notice how the speedrunner doesn't spawn onto an obsidian platform like a real speedrun, but spawns directly onto the surface. And also notice how the ender dragon seems to have already lost some of his health before the speedrunner did any damage to it. Now, the only possible explanation for this is that the speedrunner has already been to the end and simply didn't include it in the recording. And he almost would have gotten away with this until you look very closely into the corner of a screen where a single ender pearl can be found on the ground, likely from the speedrunner killing an enderman off camera and forgetting to clean it up. Now, in a normal Minecraft speedrun, the runner would likely kill the dragon with beds, maybe even a bow, but I think it's clear this is anything but a normal speedrun. Do you remember earlier in the run when the speedrunner got the villager launcher? So he equips it and dies while killing the ender dragon. How can you be this bad while cheating? This next speedrun begins, but there's already something fake. Because look to the left of where the speedrunner spawned in, where you can see a sign displaying the singular number 3, clearly placed by the speedrunner. Keep this in mind for later, as it's not the first number we'll see throughout the run. So the runner enters the village, where he starts collecting hay and breaking some beds. But when the runner goes to kill the iron golem, notice how it isn't actually attacking him back. And if you look closely into the distance, you can actually spot a second iron golem in the exact same village. He likely spawned in his own iron golem in creative mode to make it easier to kill, as iron golems built by players can't fight back. So the runner then goes to loot this village chest. And while the items inside seem fairly normal on the surface, if you take a closer look, the loaves of bread actually make the shape of the number 7. That's the second number we've seen in the speedrun, and don't forget it, as there's more coming up. So the runner crafts himself a bucket, gathers some wood, and begins to search for the ruins portal. Now, pause the footage at this moment, where we can clearly see that the ruins portal contains 8 pieces of obsidian. Now, the runner turns to the side and kills the rabbit for some food, but when he turns back to face the portal, there's magically been a piece of obsidian added, as there's now 9 blocks instead of 8. And of course, the chest contains 1 obsidian, the perfect amount to finish the portal. But how did a piece of obsidian get added to the portal? Well, let's go back to just a few seconds earlier, when the speedrunner killed the rabbit. If you put the footage in slow motion, you can actually see that there was a cut in the video, as the player magically teleported slightly to the left, which allowed the speedrunner to go off camera, place the extra piece of obsidian, and pretend like it never happened. So the runner enters the nether, and giving them the benefit of the doubt, the spawn seems completely legit. There's only one issue. When he's making his way to a nearby fortress, take a very close look at this wall, where the number 8 can actually be seen in the wall. Remember this number along with the 3 and 7 we've seen earlier in the run. Now, the runner enters the fortress, finds the blaze spawner, and gets 7 rods pretty normally. He then makes his way to a nearby bastion, where he finds an abnormal amount of piglins, way more than can naturally spawn. And when the speedrunner accidentally hits a piglin, they don't become hostile and don't attack him back. Something that's impossible, as piglins will always become hostile after you hit him, meaning the runner changes game mode to peaceful off camera. So the runner gathers his eyes of ender and leaves the nether. Now when the runner spawns into the overworld, take a very close look at this tree, where for the 4th time we can see a number mysteriously in the speedrun. This time the number 3. All these numbers will make sense very soon. So the runner throws his eyes of ender and locates the strongholds. And when he enters into the end, here's where things get weird. When he spawns in, he's greeted with a very strange looking chest. And when the runner tries to open it, he's given the option to enter a password. Well, throughout the run, we've seen the speedrunner come across 4 distinct numbers. First, we saw the number 3 on a random sign. Then, loaves of bread made the shape of a 7. He then saw the number 8 in the wall in the nether, and he saw his final number as leaves in a tree. So of course, there's only 4 possible numbers that could be the password to this chest. And when the password's successful, the runner finds an interesting item, known as the Hammer of the Storm, which gives the runner the ability to summon lightning at any moment he wants. Yeah, that item's way too overpowered. This next speedrun begins with the runner spawning directly directly in front of a village. And while everything appears to be completely normal, take a closer look at the bottom left corner of his screen. There's a singular piece of pork on the ground, meaning the world had already been played on, and he forgot to pick up the item after killing a pig. But that isn't all that he did off camera, because take a closer look at the door of this village house. A normal village house contains 2 torches, one on each side of the door. However, this village house only contains one on the left, meaning the speedrunner broke one of them before recording. And this is likely to mark out this specific village house, because the chest contains bread, apples, a carrot sniper. Wait, what the heck? Remember this for later. The speedrunner continues the run by collecting some hay and killing the iron golem to get iron and craft a bucket, when he immediately goes to this very suspiciously placed dirt block and digs straight down, which just so happens to lead him to the lava pool. But how is it possible the speedrunner knew to dig down at this specific block? Well, the only way a grass block turns into a dirt block is if something is placed over it. And because we can clearly see the speedrunner never did this, the only explanation is that he placed the dirt block in creative mode to easily remember to dig down at this specific block and find the lava pool. So the run continues with the speedrunner creating a nether portal and entering the nether, where the speedrunner finds a nearby bastion. So, using his gold, he begins to trade with the piglins to try to get loot. It's important to note that every single time you throw a gold inglet, a piglin has a 2.18% chance of giving you 4 ender pearls. And because the speedrunner only has 3 gold, the absolute max amount of ender pearls he would be able to get is 12. However, when the speedrunner is done trading, he gets a total of 15 ender pearls. The only explanation is that the speedrunner changed the loot drop percentages of ender pearls from 4 pearls to 5 for a single trade. It can't get any more obvious. So he collects his pearls and makes his way to a nearby fortress. And is it just me, or are there far more blazes than what usually spawn? Well, if we pause the footage at this frame, we can see a blaze spawner egg hidden in his inventory that he forgot to get rid of, meaning the speedrunner simply used the egg to spawn in an insane amount of blazes. So he easily collects his rods and then finds an oddly suspicious wall that clearly resembles the shape of a nether portal. And of course, this position spawns the speedrunner directly into the end portal room. It's pretty obvious he marked out this specific spot as he knew it would lead him to the portal. So the speedrunner places the eyes and makes his way into the end. In a normal speedrun, the speedrunner would likely use beds to kill the ender dragon, but we can clearly see that the speedrunner doesn't have a single bed in his inventory. Well, do you remember when earlier in the run the speedrunner found a carrot launcher in this village chest? This is gonna be interesting. I guess the ender dragon couldn't handle a simple carrot launcher. This next speedrunner spawns in directly next to a ruined portal. Suspicious, but considering his spawn seems fairly normal, we can say it's legit. However, the loot inside this ruined portal chest is a different story, because scattered among the obsidian and gold is an item that isn't possible to spawn in this chest. This piece of blackstone. And while it may appear incredibly innocent, this one block will be extremely important part of the speedrun very soon. Now, even though the runner spawned directly next to a portal, without enough obsidian, he's forced to look for a nearby village. And while the village looks completely normal on the surface, there's one small detail which reveals there's something incredibly suspicious going on. Because look very closely at this village light post. A normal village light post contains 4 torches, one on each side of the block. But in this speedrun, one of the torches has been mysteriously missing. And once the speedrunner notices this, they decide to dig straight down under it, leading them to a fully completed nether portal. It's pretty obvious they broke one of the torches to remember a ruined portal was under this specific lamppost. So the runner enters the portal and heads into the nether. And without scanning or doing any speedrun technique, they somehow manage to locate the bastion almost immediately. But rewind the footage to when they first spawned in. Take a close look at this lava pool. If you look closely, you can actually see that it creates the shape of an arrow. And this arrow points to the exact direction of the bastion. The runner clearly messed with it before recording to point themselves in the correct direction. So after collecting 16 ender pearls, a normal speedrunner would then search for a nearby fortress. But this speedrunner oddly decides to start building a nether portal, even though he hasn't been to a fortress and has 0 blaze rods. Well, instead of using flint and steel to light the portal, they decide to use gold? How is that even possible? Well, the speedrunner enters it and they spawn directly into a fortress. Since when did they add a fortress portal into Minecraft? So the runner finds the blaze spawner where they collect 9 rods very quickly. They then build a normal nether portal and head back into the overworld. And using the process of triangulation, they locate the stronghold and enter the end. Well, do you remember when earlier in the run, the speedrunner found this black stone block in the ruined portal chest? Well, he uses that very block as the final piece to crafting the super infinite matter sword, which deals over 128,000 damage with one swing. And the Ender Dragon stands no chance against this weapon. This next speedrunner is so confident, he believes he'll somehow get a world record.
Today's the day I'm going to get the world record for Minecraft speedrunning.
So let's take a look. Right off the bat, notice how he doesn't show any world generation and skips straight from the loading screen to the spawn. Very suspicious. But giving him the benefit of the doubt, his spawn does seem fairly normal. He's in survival mode, he selected the first slot in his inventory, and he's even provided us with a timer to track the speedrun. But nothing can quite prepare you for what's about to happen. Is that Jesus? This must be a new update that I missed out on. So Jesus spawns in and breaks a sand block leading to a chest, which of course contains some of the most overpowered loot in the game. So the speedrunner continues by looking for a spot to build a nether portal using the obsidian he received from Jesus. But in this frame, we can clearly see he changes game mode to survival, meaning there was a cut in his footage. My suspicion is he was looking for the best coordinates to place his nether portal, but forgot to hide this message. So he enters the nether and yet again the chat exposes his cheating. But instead of looking for a bastion to get the gold needed to trade with piglins, he magically gets all of the gold he needs from, you guessed it, Jesus. So he tries to find a piglin to use this gold, and it seems as though he finds one. But take a closer look. In slow motion, you can see that the piglin makes this very fast and unrealistic movement, which is very different from the movement mechanics of a real piglin. Also, the shape of the piglin looks slightly different from a real one. All this points to the piglin being an actual player, most likely one of his friends simply using a piglin skin. So he gives this quote-unquote piglin his gold in hopes to receive some loot. But instead of blaze rods, his piglin friend accidentally gives him sticks. How can you be this bad while cheating? So he eventually gets his blaze rods and heads back to the overworld. And it appears as though he's actually trying to speedrun for real because he starts throwing his eyes of ender to try to find the strongholds. But as he's doing this, he finds a rather interesting mob. Or shall I say, Sonic? How many updates did I miss? So Sonic blesses the runner with a speed effect that's apparently level 1001. And I guess that's so fast that he just teleports straight into the end. Now, even though the speedrunner got insanely overpowered loot earlier in the run, you'll notice that he doesn't remember to bring any beds with him, something used by almost all speedrunners in a speedrun. But I guess this guy had some feeling that he would magically find Dream in the end. Wait, that's not the real one, is it? And Dream gifts the speedrunner a netherite axe with sharpness level 255. And it's clear that the Ender Dragon stands no chance against this speedrunner. This next run starts off fairly normally, with the runner mining some wood and crafting some tools. The only possible issue could be the fact that the speedrunner has the 4th slot selected instead of the 1st, but we'll let it slide. So the speedrunner goes to finish breaking this tree. Why is there a ladder there? Is that Dream ore? I don't even know what I'm looking at, but I guess I missed the update when they added Dream ore into Minecraft. Now there also happens to be a chest in this strange cave the speedrunner enters, and what do you know, there's a ton of overpowered items, including a block of Dream, which apparently can be turned into ingots, and then a full set of armor. Since when did Dream get all of this stuff in Minecraft? So, fully equipped with the Dream armor, the speedrunner makes his way to the Nether. But right off the bat, notice this strange block of TNT right as he spawns in, which is impossible, as the only place TNT can spawn naturally is under a desert temple, meaning the speedrunner planted this here in creative mode. And this makes sense, because after he lights off the TNT, a chest is revealed hidden in the ground, where the speedrunner gets an obnoxious amount of ender pearls from the chest. Now normally the runner would then make his way to a fortress to collect blaze rods so he can craft Eyes of Ender for the portal. But in this speedrun, the runner completely ignores going to a fortress, and this may make sense later. So the runner spawns back into the overworld and take a very close look at these grass blocks as soon as he spawns in. They actually appear to form what looks to be an arrow, pointing the speedrunner in a very specific direction. So the runner follows the direction of the arrow, and hold on, wait, why exactly is he a grizzly bear? More importantly, how is he a grizzly bear? I'm just not gonna ask any more questions. So right here, the speedrunner makes a blatant cut in his recording, as we can clearly see he changed his game into survival, and after jumping in this random pool of lava, the speedrunner falls down a hole straight into, you guessed it, the end portal. And now it's pretty obvious as to why he set up an arrow, because it leads him straight to the location of the end portal. So the runner spawns into the end, and right away, why are there random Dream NPCs in the end? Now he also finds what is a wish.com version of a wither in the end. This speedrun is so weird. So the runner then opens a chest with 2 different things. First, a rainbow scythe, which clearly is not a real weapon in Minecraft, and he also gets another wither head and finishes the wither. I don't think that's a normal wither. Why is it so scary? Luckily, using the rainbow scythe the speedrunner got from the chest, he somehow kills the Ender Dragon without getting demolished by this insane wither. Maybe because the speedrunner is somehow in creative mode. This next speedrunner spawns in, but pay close attention to the join message in the bottom left corner. This message can only appear when playing on a server, which is not allowed on a speedrun. And after getting some hay and looting some chests, notice this strange black figure in the corner, which clearly resembles another player's leg. Remember this for later. The speedrunner makes his way to a ruined portal, but does not seem to have any flint and steel to light it. But when he turns around, it's magically floating there on the ground, when it was clearly not there before. He's also missing 1 piece of obsidian for the nether portal, but when he turns back around, it's there too. However, take a closer look at the sky when you can see some particles floating around, which is a byproduct of using an invisibility potion, which is obviously coming from the player we saw earlier in the speedrun. Also, when putting the footage into an audio software, you can see the exact point when the invisibility potion was drank. So he spawns into the nether and begins to look for a fortress, where he starts to fight blazes to try to get some blaze rods. But even though we only see him kill 4 blazes, he somehow has 8 blaze rods in his inventory. Now this would mean each blaze dropped 2 rods, even though they have a max drop limit of only 1. The speedrunner clearly messed with the loot drop percentages. He then makes his way to a bastion, where he starts to throw gold at piglins to try to get ender pearls, and miraculously gets 16 ender pearls from only 1 trade. But after putting putting the footage into an editing software, we can see the pearls are coming from slightly above the piglin, not from the piglin itself, meaning his invisible friend from earlier is actually the one throwing the pearls. He then makes his way back to the overworld where a very specific spot has been marked out to make another portal, which of course teleports the speedrunner straight to the end portal room. And when he gets into the end, notice how half of the pillars are completely missing, and the ones that are there don't have any crystals. So the runner pulls out his bow and begins to shoot at the dragon when a random sword drops from the sky called the Dragon Killer, which was clearly from his friend, and I think the name speaks for itself. This next speedrunner spawns in right next to a desert pyramid, but why is the floor filled with sand and not sandstone? And the center block is lapis lazuli, not blue terracotta, meaning the speedrunner clearly messed with it before recording. And when he drops down, there isn't a pressure plate at all, and everyone knows desert temples have a pressure plate, and of course every chest has extremely overpowered items. After leaving the village, the speedrunner needs to find a ruined portal. So why is he digging down at this random lake? Well, of course, the digging leads him straight down to a ruined portal. He then spawns into the nether directly next to a fortress, where he doesn't even bother to fight any blazes, but instead finds 8 blaze rods in a fortress chest, which is clearly impossible as they don't even spawn here. He then finds a bastion right next to the fortress, and after trading with piglins, he gets all of the pearls he needs and heads back to his portal. But on the way back, he notices a very strange shape in the ground, which has clearly been tampered with for a nether portal to be built here. And after digging down straight off spawn, he drops straight into the strongholds. And after lighting the portal, the speedrunner spawns directly onto the surface instead of the black obsidian platform like a real speedrun. The rest is normal, we're moving on. This next speedrun begins with the runner mining wood and making some tools, where he locates a nearby village. But for a split second, we can see a very strange item in his inventory. Remember this for later. The speedrunner goes around the village houses until he reaches the blacksmith, where he not only finds a chest with a water bucket, but a portal? How is he at a lava pool? After forming his nether portal, he then enters into the nether, where he locates a nearby fortress, but only decides to kill a single blaze. And he also finds an ender pearl at a very suspicious and obviously fake chest in the fortress, which he clearly placed in creative mode. And when he turns around, he finds another portal, which leads him straight back to the nether portal. Now, with only one eye of ender, the speedrunner begins to locate the strongholds. And once he does, he digs down and enters the end portal room, where the end portal has 11 eyes of ender already placed, which has over a 1 in 9 billion chance of happening. But the speedrunner has no beds, so how is he gonna kill the ender dragon? Well, do you remember earlier in the speedrun where he had a very interesting item in his inventory? Well, it turns out to be a detonator, and I'll just let the footage speak for itself. The next one starts and our speedrunner spawns next to a village, where he happens to find some insane loot in his very first chest, including blaze rods, which isn't possible to spawn in a village chest. He also happens to loot a ton of obsidian. But do you notice something? The red textures around the lock of a chest clearly show that it's a trap chest, which don't spawn in villages, meaning he obviously placed this in creative. And instead of making his way to the nether portal now, he travels away until he comes to a very strange area of blocks, which was clearly tampered with by the speedrunner to build another portal. And this is made obvious when he magically spawns directly into a fortress. But the speedrunner already has blaze rods, so why would he need to be in a fortress? Because in this fortress, it happens to contain a piglin spawner instead of a blaze spawner, which obviously isn't possible in Minecraft, making it incredibly easy for our speedrunner to get all the pearls that he needs. And the speedrunner also finds a pre-lit nether portal conveniently on his way out of the fortress, which is clearly different from the one that spawned him in, which teleports him straight into the end portal room with the silverfish spawner missing. And the speedrunner crafts his eyes and begins to light the end portal until, wait, is this guy seriously getting DM'd by his mom on Discord? And now he has to go do some chores? Well, I guess something happened because the speedrun just cuts off off there. This next speedrunner begins with the speedrunner spawning right next to a village, where he already has XP before the run starts. And after collecting some hay, why is there not 1, but 2, 3, 4, and 5 iron golems in the village, when a normal village only contains 1? He then travels to a set of village houses, where one of the doors has somehow already been opened. And then he finds 11 ender pearls in the village chests, which is impossible as ender pearls can't spawn in these village chests, meaning he clearly placed them before the run started. And when he goes to kill the iron golem to get some iron, he doesn't get the achievement for collecting it, meaning he had already messed with the golems before he started recording. He then finds a nearby shipwreck to go loot, where he happens to find 9 blaze rods, which is impossible. Blaze rods can't spawn in shipwreck chests. He then locates a nearby ruins portal, where he finds the exact amount of obsidian needed to complete it. But he already has Eyes of Ender. Why does he need to go to the Nether at all? Is that even possible? And after entering the end, the run's pretty normal, so we're moving on. This next speedrunner begins by crafting some tools and finding a desert pyramid, where he starts to loot chests, but take a closer look at this specific chest. There is a red outline around the lock, meaning it's a trap chest, not a real chest, meaning he placed it in creative mode. And the speedrunner also gets a blaze rod in the chest, which is impossible. Blaze rods can't spawn in desert temples. And when he finds a nearby lava pool, the speedrunner is having a lot of trouble building the portal. So he decides to look up a YouTube tutorial on how to do it during his speedrun, which would clearly be wasting way too much time in a real speedrun. After finishing the portal, he makes his way to the Nether, where he finds a fortress and collects some blaze rods. But when he goes to the bastion, he only collects 4 ender pearls instead of the usual 12 to 16. Remember the specific amount of pearls for later. The speedrunner makes his way back to the overworld, where he immediately digs down at a seemingly random spot, which just so happens to drop him straight into the stronghold. But take a closer look at the floor. This is the floor of a real stronghold, which clearly doesn't have any of the cobblestone in this stronghold, which was clearly placed as a way to lead the speedrunner straight to the end portal room. But wait, this end portal looks strange. Why are there only 4 frames when a normal end portal contains 12? Well, remember when the speedrunner only collected 4 pearls earlier in the run? There's no way that actually works. This next speedrunner spawns in right next to a pillager outpost, but notice how none of the pillagers are attacking him even though the speedrunner punches one. Because if you take a closer look at his hotbar, his hearts are completely edited in. And the speedrunner is actually in creative mode, because mobs don't fight back in creative mode. He then finds the chest to loot the outpost. But when comparing it to a real pillager outpost, the chest is placed just 1 block to the right, meaning the speedrunner accidentally placed it in the wrong spot in creative mode. The speedrunner then finds a nearby village, but only decides to loot one specific house, which has a netherite sword, which is impossible. Netherite swords can't spawn in village chests. He then finds a nearby lava pool where a spot for a nether portal has clearly been marked. And it's no surprise that this location leads him right into a fortress. However, he finds a blaze spawner in a very unusual spot. It's obvious blaze spawners can't spawn here, meaning he placed this in creative before recording. And even though the runner only kills 2 blazes, he gets 7 rods in his inventory. Let's just move on. This next speedrunner spawns right in front of a chest, and oh no. I do kind of feel bad for this village, I'm not gonna lie. Did he really have to take out the villagers like that? Let's just hope he's more chill in the nether. That was pretty fast. Now this is about to be crazy. And there goes all the crystals. Yeah, the Ender Dragon stands no chance. Well, I guess he just finished that speedrun. This next speedrun starts off with a bit of a cocky speedrunner,
Bro, this speedrun's gonna be so easy.
where he goes to loot a chest and builds himself some tools to use. But while he's taking his boat out to sea, move your focus towards the chat. Why is the language set to Serbian when the speedrunner clearly speaks English? Remember this for later. The speedrunner then continues by traveling underwater, crafting a portal, and entering the nether. And the speedrunner manages to find both a bastion collecting some ender pearls, as well as a fortress fortress, collecting some blaze rods. But pause. This is the leaderboard on the actual speedrun.com website for 1.16 RSG in Minecraft. And if we take a look at the second best time ever recorded, does this gameplay look familiar? The speedrunner literally put his face cam over an existing world record speedrun, and when comparing side by side, this is just hilariously fake, and submitted the run to the real speedrun.com. This next speedrunner spawns in, but immediately there's something off. This is the angle when you spawn in for a normal Minecraft speedrun, but you can clearly see he is angled slightly facing up, meaning he's already generated this world. He then makes his way to a nearby village where there is not 1, 2, but 3 iron golems, when a normal village only spawns a max of 1. So the speedrunner collects some beds and loots some chests before making his way to a nearby lava pool. And he starts to make the nether portal using a water bucket, but just seconds before we can see he didn't even have a water bucket in his inventory. But if you replay this clip in slow motion, you can see a slight cut in the recording, meaning the speedrunner got the water bucket off camera. The speedrunner then enters the nether where he looks for a nearby fortress, and after collecting 7 blaze rods, he heads towards a bastion to trade for pearls. But take a closer look at this specific piglin, which seems just a little off. When comparing side by side to a real piglin, you can tell that it's literally just another player in a piglin skin, which explains him getting 32 ender pearls from a single trade. He then makes his way back to the overworld, where he spawns into a completely normal beach, but there's one piece of sandstone, which the speedrunner clearly marked out earlier in the run, which explains him digging straight down into the stronghold. So he puts his eyes into the portal, and the rest is normal. We're moving on. The next run begins with our speedrunner spawning into a village and looting a ruined portal chest, which would be completely normal until you realize it's impossible for fire resistance to spawn here. Remember the fire resistance for later. He then grabs his loot and searches for an iron golem to kill. But why is there not 1, but 2, 3, and 4 iron golems in the village, when a normal village only contains 1? He makes his way back to the ruined portal and into the nether, where the speedrunner drinks his fire resistance and jumps into a very certain lava pool, which suddenly drops the speedrunner right into the middle of a fortress. Once in the fortress, the speedrunner begins to search for a blaze spawner, but there seems to be quite a few more blazes than normal, which is explained if you look closely in the top right corner of his screen, where a second blaze spawner has been placed in creative mode. After collecting his blaze rods, the speedrunner needs to find a bastion, but pay close attention to these specific blocks on the wall, because after turning around, the speedrunner miraculously finds himself a bastion. And while the cut is not clearly noticeable, we could clearly see beforehand that there was not a bastion in sight. Now the rest of the run's pretty normal, so we're moving on. This next speedrunner literally exposes himself using a keyboard cam. The run starts off and the runner spawns in a good seed near an underwater crevice, where he begins to create a nether portal using the magma. And this is where the first sign of it being fake start to show up. The speedrunner appears to have his hands completely off his mouse for a brief second, yet he simultaneously places the flint and steel, which lights the nether portal on fire. How would it be possible if he never even clicked his mouse? Now he then spawns directly next to a bastion, where he gets some extremely lucky trades, and his seed also happens to have a fortress pearl distance away from the bastion, which is extremely rare. And this is where things get very fake. The speedrunner appears to crack his knuckles, where both hands are clearly away from the keyboard and mouse, while his gameplay is showing him fighting blazes at the exact same time. Pause. Let's do a bit of digging, because this is literally impossible. And after going to the official speedrun.com website, we see the 47th fastest speedrun ever, where the gameplay is shockingly similar to the speedrun we just saw. And it's clearly fake when you realize the speedrunner simply placed his keyboard cam over a speedrun that had already existed. This next speedrunner is attempting the world's record for 1.8.9 random seed. But watch closely. The run starts off pretty normally with our speedrunner spawning in a village. But do you notice that? In a split-second frame, we can see a glimpse of a frog in Minecraft, which not only doesn't spawn in the biome he's in, but doesn't exist in Minecraft 1.8.9, the specific version this speedrunner is running for. The speedrun continues by collecting beds and searching for a ruined portal. Finally, the speedrunner finds it, and once the speedrunner spawns in the nether, we see this. The updated textures for netherrack and blocks that don't exist in Minecraft Minecraft 8.9. Clearly, the speedrunner tried to get an advantage by running a newer version of Minecraft, but submitting it for 1.8.9. This next speedrunner starts off the run spawning right in front of a village, where he gets some hay and loots some chests. He then finds a nearby lava pool and begins to craft another portal, but take a closer look at his face cam during this process. When the speedrunner goes to stretch, we can clearly see his hands off the keyboard, even though his character is moving at this exact time. If you look even closer, it appears the speedrunner has a controller in his hand. However, earlier in the run when he opened his inventory, we could clearly see a mouse cursor being used. This all points to the speedrunner using pre-recorded footage but pretending like he's playing. So he enters the nether, but lava is already flowing as he spawns in, meaning he's already been to the nether before recording. He also doesn't get an achievement when he enters the nether fortress. After collecting blaze rods, he heads to the bastion where he gets ender pearls, and back to the overworld where he begins to throw eyes of ender. But notice how when the speedrunner throws the eye, he deliberately turns 90 degrees and runs in the other direction, which makes no sense because the eyes actually directly lead to the location of the stronghold. But he digs down at this specific spot and finds an end portal that's clearly been built in creative mode. This next speedrun seems to appear normal at first, with our speedrunner spawning into a village. But all of a sudden, the speedrunner immediately digs down from the village and drops down straight into a stronghold. But after a little search on the web, I found this exact seed straight out of a YouTube video called the best Minecraft seeds for speedrunning, which explains this incredibly lucky seed. And when he enters the portal room, there is 10 eyes already in the portal, which has a 1 in a trillion chance of happening. And take a look at the edges here. They aren't filled with lava like a normal portal room, meaning the speedrunner tampered with them in creative mode, which explains why he breaks this specific block, leading him to a random chest that has the perfect amount of eyes that he needs, and makes his way into the end. I've seen enough. Let's get to the next speedrun. This next speedrunner starts off by mining wood and crafting some tools, where he then finds a nearby shipwreck where he finds some pretty good loot, except for the fact that it's impossible for obsidian to spawn in a shipwreck chest. He then uses the obsidian to complete a nearby ruined portal, where he spawns in right next to a fortress. Now, after collecting his 7 blaze rods, he happens to find a bastion right next door, where he finds an abnormal amount of piglins and manages to get 4 stacks of ender pearls, which is clearly impossible. He then makes his way back to the overworld, where he digs down at a very specific block, which just so happens to drop him straight into the stronghold. And after entering the end, how is the ender dragon already lost some health? And why have all of the crystals been removed from the pillars? Let's just move on. The next run begins and the runner spawns directly next to a desert temple, where he already has 1 XP. And after entering the pyramid, the center block is blue concrete, not blue terracotta, showing us the speedrunner had previously messed with it before recording. And when the speedrunner drops down inside the temple, he's greeted with OP items from every chest and doesn't light off any TNT after stepping on the pressure plate. He continues the run by making his way to a nearby village. And for a brief second, when the speedrunner checks his inventory, we can spot a singular commands block hidden in the corner, which is not only impossible to get into survival, but we'll see what he does with this later. After looting the village, he makes his way to find a ruined portal, where he has just the right amount of obsidian to finish it. And once the speedrunner enters the nether, he spawns directly next to a fortress. But scratch that. The speedrunner instead decides to head back to the overworld, craft himself a boat, and sail away in a random direction towards land. He then finds something strange. Out of an entire beach of normal sand, there is a singular piece of sandstone, to which the speedrunner happens to dig down from and lands directly in the end portal room, showing us that he clearly tried to mark the spot with something that he didn't want us to see. But there's a problem. Where is the speedrunner supposed to get his eyes of ender from? Well, do you remember the command block from earlier? It's gone. And instead, there's a button on the wall that activates a command which gives the speedrunner 11 eyes of ender, clearly showing us he used this command block to get these pearls. And after he enters the end, the fight's pretty normal, so we're moving on. The next run begins by breaking wood and making some tools, where they then find a nearby village, where they enter a blacksmith house and find an enchanting table, which don't spawn in blacksmiths. He also then conveniently finds a netherite sword and bottles of enchanting in the chest right beside it, which have clearly been placed in creative mode. Now, after enchanting his sword, he looks to kill an iron golem. Is that a diamond golem that literally drops diamonds when killed? He then needs to find a nearby ruined portal. And is that just me, or does that not look like a real ruined portal at all? And the portal is assured to be fake due to there being a trap chest instead of a normal chest. Now, once entering the nether, the speedrunner needs to find a fortress, where he digs into this wall, turns around, and magically finds one. But this fortress was clearly not here when he spawned in. The speedrunner then finds a blaze spawner. However, this is clearly not where a normal blaze spawner is usually located, meaning the speedrunner placed this here in creative mode. After collecting all of his blaze rods, the speedrunner makes the interesting choice of heading back to the overworld, without ever going to a bastion where normal speedrunners get ender pearls. However, when he spawns back in, he somehow has 16 ender pearls, which he must have just gotten off camera. The speedrunner then attempts a known speedrun technique known as triangulation. However, when comparing his technique to a real speedrun, he clearly has no idea what he's doing and he's just throwing the eyes in random directions. But he somehow still comes up with the exact spot to dig down from. And what do you know? This leads him straight to the end portal room. The speedrunner clearly didn't use triangulation, but located this using spectator mode. And once the speedrunner enters the end, he finds a random chest with beds where he spawns, which is clearly fake, so let's just move on. This next speedrun starts off by spawning on a mountain, but as he's climbing down, we see something a little suspicious. The shape of a nether portal is outlined in the wall right as he spawned in. Keep this in mind for later. The speedrunner eventually finds a desert village in which he loots. He then travels all the way back towards his spawn and this really strange structure, which has clearly been tampered with. And nah, what? So this next speedrun begins with the runner mining some wood, crafting some tools, and finding a nearby village, where he enters this house and finds a chest with some pretty normal items. Some iron, some bread. Is that a dragon egg? Remember this for later. So the speedrunner then goes to kill the iron golem. But along with dropping iron, the iron golem also drops flint and steel. Something that is impossible, as flint and steel can't be dropped from iron golems. So the speedrunner travels to a nearby ruined portal and uses the flint and steel he got from the iron golem to enter the nether. Okay, so the speedrunner is in the nether and take a very good look at the areas surrounding him when he spawns, because he goes to this wall and when he turns around, he's magically in front of a bastion. But if we compare this to the area he was at just seconds before, we can clearly tell there was never a bastion there, meaning he used turning around at the wall as a distraction to make a cut in the speedrun. This is further proven when he accidentally opens his chat, revealing he used a /locate command. But even with all of this cheating, the speedrunner decides to completely ignore the bastion and never go inside of it. Even though in a normal speedrun, the bastion is used to trade with piglins and get ender pearls. But this decision will make some sense in a second. So he then finds a fortress and begins to kill some blazes. But these blazes not only drop blaze rods, but they also drop ender pearls, meaning the speedrunner not only messed with the loot drops of the blazes, but now it makes sense as to why he completely ignored the bastion. So he collects all of the rods and pearls that he needs and wants to head back to the overworld, where he finds a very specific spot marked out to build a nether portal. But if we take a closer look at the speedrunner's inventory, he has 0 obsidian, so how is he supposed to craft a nether portal? Okay, well, I guess he's deciding to build it with nether bricks, not really sure how that's supposed to work. Wait, how did that work? So the speedrunner heads back to the overworld and ends up finding the stronghold and enters it. So the speedrunner fills the portal and makes his way into the end. And the first thing you'll notice is that all of the end crystals are mysteriously gone. And the second thing you'll notice is, wait, is that a 3-headed ender dragon? This world is so cursed. Now, in a normal speedrun, beds are usually the preferred way to beat the game. But I'm not sure if measly little beds will be able to handle the 3-headed dragon. Well, do you remember earlier in the run when the speedrunner found a dragon egg? Well, he uses the egg to spawn in his very own fire dragon that he can actually ride. If you enjoyed, please subscribe. Bye!